so that British Columbia takes control of our own immigration. We set our targets
Leader of the official opposition in the BC legislature.
that we are facing as a province, whether it is our trade, or the things that are going on our streets, and the safety.
Thank you for making the time on this week, and it's an opportunity for the leader of the Conservative Party of BC, the leader of the official opposition in the BC legislature, to have a chance to meet the Korean media and through you, the Korean community. So I'm very happy to be here with the leader, John Rustad, who has been working very hard for British Columbians and can be a strong voice for various communities. So today I'm very proud to introduce you to the Korean media that is very active and keeping the whole community informed. A community of about 80,000 plus individuals. 오늘 이렇게 시간 내주셔서 너무나 감사드립니다. 존 러스태드 BC 보수당 대표님이 한인 커뮤니티를 만나고 싶다고 그러셔서 좀 더 잘 알고 싶어서, 그런데 오늘은 이렇게 정식으로 첫 모임을 언론 통해서 하는데 저는 그냥 한인 캐네디언으로서 이런 뜻으로 이렇게 만나시는 게 너무 기뻐서 오늘 이렇게 시간 내주셔서 너무나 감사합니다. 저도 대표님은 개인적으로 알고 우리 BC 이제 야당이지만 이제 언젠간 다음 선거에 이렇게 수상이 되실 수 있는 분이시고 우리 한인 커뮤니티에 관심 두시는 게 아주 중요하다고 생각을 해서 저도 이렇게 저는 그냥 조용히 이렇게 소개하고 나서는 가만히 있을 거지만 오늘 우리 제 인턴 국회 인턴으로 하는 타일러 홍 한국에서 태어났지만 아버지가 캐네디언이고 군대도 갔다 와서 지금 이제 저보다 한국말을 더 잘할 것 같아서 그리고 군대 가서는 미국 군대와 한국 군대 그 인터프리팅을 통역을 했대요. 그래서 그런 경험이 있으니까 오늘 그냥 이렇게 맡겨서 잘 봐주세요. 이게 이런 거 처음이니까. So I've explained that Tyler will be your interpreter, and that he has interpreted for between the U.S. Army and the Korean Army in Korea, but it's his first political interpreting role. So he will be your voice, so to speak, and he'll do his best. But we thank you for taking the time to get to know the community through this conference and meet the media. And John Rustad wants to have lots of time for Q&A, so we will invite him to say a few words, and then we can go right into questions and answers. Thank you.
I'll pass that mic to him for the time being.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be able to be here today. I must admit, this has been too long. I should have been here much sooner than this to be able to engage with the community. There's a number of things that are going on in British Columbia that I thought I should touch on initially. And what I mean by that is obviously there are many, many issues that we are facing as a province, whether it is our trade relations, whether it is our economy that is struggling, whether it is our healthcare that seems to be in a significant crisis. We've got many issues with crime, with drugs, with things that are going on our streets and the safety for people. Of course, there's also, there's also the issues of our immigration and obviously, what's going on with our education system. These are all major issues for us here in British Columbia.
일단 그 야당 대표님 전이 얘기한 거는 그 지금 현재 그 브리티시 컬럼비아 주에 되게 문제가 많다고 일단 전했습니다. 일단 제일 큰 문제는 경제적인 문제랑 그 저희 시민들의 그 경제적인 문제랑 그 또 되게 다른 많은 적으로 힘들어서 일단 여기 나와서 그런 점들을 좀 그런 점들에 대해서 좀 얘기하고 일단 다들 되게 바쁘신데 시간을 마련해 주시고 여기 나온 거를 되게 감사하다고 얘기했습니다.
Thank you. And so what I would like to do is maybe just spend a few minutes talking about a number of these issues and our perspective in terms of what we would like to see as the Conservative Party of British Columbia, and then from there open it up to questions.
일단 대표님께서 일단 얘기하고 싶은 점들 먼저 짚고 넘어가고 그 다음에 Q&A를 진행하고 싶다고 그렇게 얘기해 주셨습니다.
Thanks. So I want to start off with one of the biggest issues facing us in British Columbia today, which is affordability in our economy. Many people are really struggling to be able to buy homes. They're struggling to be able to put food on the table. Particular half of the youth in this province are thinking about leaving British Columbia. And to me, that is the role of government to change that. I think that's a tragedy. People should be able to look at how to build a future in British Columbia. And so it's a major issue that, in my opinion, we need to address head on.
일단 제일 큰 문제는 경제적인 문제라고 말씀하셨고 그 다음에 그 중에서 사실 지금 브리티시 콜롬비아 저희 주에 거의 사람들 특히 이민 가족들 거의 절반이 지금 다른 데로 이민 가려고 그 정도로 경제가 안 좋고 그 다음에 지금 일자리 구하는 거랑 그 다음에 그 사람들이 특히 이민 가족들이 되게 그런 일자리 구하는 것도 힘들고 그런 어려운 데서 얘기하셨습니다.
So when I think about our youth, I think about them wanting to leave British Columbia, I think what we need to see in this province is we need to see significant change and improvement in our economy. That's also the biggest issue that we need to deal with trade. When I think about the fact that we're selling our natural gas to the United States at an 80% discount, and then they're telling us they don't need our natural gas. Why are we sending them our natural gas? We need to actually build those trade options. We need to get our products offshore, expand our port capacity, get them to countries in the Pacific Rim, countries like Korea, like China, like Japan, India. We need to be dramatically expanding our economy and our presence in terms of how we do trade with the Asia-Pacific Rim.
지금 현재 제일 큰 문제는 미국에서 아무래도 트럼프 대통령이 그 캐나다에서 제공되는 제품들이랑 그런 캐나다에서 찾을 수 있는 그런 물건들을 되게 80% 세금이나 떼고 있다. 그래서 그게 제일 큰 문제고 다른 나라 인도나 일본이나 그런 나라들처럼 조금 더 미국이랑 좀 자유롭게 그렇게 되면 그럼 더 좋다고 그렇게 얘기하셨습니다. 그래서 그게 현재는 제일 가장 큰 문제라고 말씀하셨습니다.
So expanding our trade isn't just about trading our goods, but it's also about how you build the economy and those strong paying jobs. Many youth that are thinking about leaving British Columbia are thinking about leaving this province because they can't see how to be able to build a future here. They don't see how to be able to raise a family, to be able to buy a home, to be able to see their children successful. And so we need to see a strong economy. We need to see strong wage growth. We need to see those opportunities created right across this province. Taking advantage of our natural resources is the first step in being able to do that. There's much more that we need to do as well, which is significant tax relief, reduction of taxes, and making it much easier for people to be able to do business, to be able to start a business, to be able to be successful, and to be able to hire people in this province.
일단 이 현재 경제적인 문제에서 가장 빠르게 벗어날 수 있는 방법은 사람들한테 일자리랑 기회를 더 많이 줘야 된다고 그렇게 얘기하셨습니다. 특히 이민 가족들은 일자리가 구하기 너무 힘든데 일단 그 사람들한테 먼저 그 일자리에 대한 그런 그 돈을 더 지급하거나 아니면 일자리를 더 많이 만들어주는 게 제일 큰 목표라고 말씀하셨습니다.
And he's focusing on the youth, not just the immigrant families, and to develop natural resources.
그리고 대표님이 말씀하신 게 제일 저희 사회에서 제일 중요한 거는 아무래도 어린 친구들, 20대 미만의 친구들이 저희 브리티시 컬럼비아 주를 앞으로 나서갈 친구들이기 때문에 그 친구들한테 가장 큰 베니핏을 주는 게 제일 큰 목표라고 말씀하셨습니다.
And the development of natural resources.
그리고 저희 그 브리티시 컬럼비아에서 찾을 수 있는 자연적인 그 물건들이랑 그런 재료들을 사용해서 그런 거를 써서 그 앞으로 이렇게 나서갈 생각입니다.
When I think about, once again, our youth, as well as, our families in British Columbia, healthcare is a huge problem. And we are, as this NDP government is currently running, they say it's a $10.8 billion deficit. The whisper number I'm hearing is going to be $18 billion deficit, which is unheard of in a province like British Columbia. If we do not get our economy going, we're not going to be able to have the investments in healthcare. We're not going to be able to do the tax relief that we need. And we're going to see more families, more youth leaving this province unless we can change course away from what this NDP government is doing.
그 어린 친구들이랑 어린 그 이민 가족들은 다 그냥 브리티시 컬럼비아 주를 나갈 거고 다른 데로 이민 갈 거고 그 다음에 특히 지금 제일 큰 문제점은 특히 이민 가족들이랑 어린 친구들이 어디가 아프면 그렇게 쉽게 치료를 못 받는 게 제일 큰 문제라고 말씀하셨습니다. 그래서 그 점을 개선하는 법은 아무래도 저희 그 브리티시 컬럼비아주의 경제를 더 앞으로 발전하는 것밖에 없다고 말씀하셨습니다.
Part of that as well is it's not just about healthcare, but it's also about making sure that we have safe communities and safe streets. So we need to see significant investment in addiction treatment and recovery. We need to see significant investment in mental health so that we can help people to be able to get healthy again. We want to make sure that we support parents in their rights to be able to look after their children through all of this. But once again, in order to be able to see these investments, we need to have a strong economy. We need to significantly change what's happening in this province. We do not have that ability to do those kind of investments today because of the deficit and the way our economy is going.
일단은 지금 경제 때문에 이민 가족들이랑 어린 친구들도 힘들어한 건 사실이지만 또 다른 문제는 아무래도 저희 브리티시 컬럼비아 주의 시민들이 그 안전하게 살 수 있는 그게 가장 중요하다고 생각합니다. 근데 안전하게 살고 싶으면 아무래도 브리티시 컬럼비아 주는 지금 한 몇 년간 아무래도 마약과 전쟁이랑 그 홈리스 상태가 되게 안 좋은 상태라서 그래서 그런 거를 개선해야 되는데 그런 거를 개선하고 싶으면 아무래도 돈이 필요하고 그 다음에 경제적인 상황이 그래도 좋아져야 되는데 현재 정부는 그런 거를 좀 안 고려하는 게 제일 큰 문제점이라고 말씀하셨습니다.
So in order to see that strong economic growth, we have to also face a reality that British Columbia does not have the workforce that we need. What I mean by that is there will be 1 million job openings over the next decade. We're only going to graduate 500,000 students. So we need immigration. We need to see people being able to come into this province. However, the process that we're doing from Ottawa is not working for British Columbia. British Columbia needs to take control of our own immigration. We need to do targeted immigration to make sure people can come in, have the skills to be able to meet, whether it's doctors or nurses, whether it is truck drivers or electricians, whatever the case may be. We need to make sure that we have those abilities. We need to be able to support, of course, our students that are here to be able to do this. But it's a big step that we need to do as British Columbia to make sure that we're meeting our needs and not having it dictated from 3,000 kilometers. So we'll take control of our own immigration and we'll make sure that we're meeting our needs here in British Columbia.
현재 오토와에서 그 이민 상황을 거의 다 컨트롤하고 있는데 지금 제일 큰 문제점이 그거라고 말씀하셨습니다. 브리티시 컬럼비아로 이민 오고 싶은 가족들이나 그런 분들은 브리티시 컬럼비아가 그런 것에 대한 컨트롤이 있다고 생각해야 되는데 아무래도 다 오토와 그쪽에서 이런 게 다 결정되니까 밖에 있는 사람들이 그 브리티시 컬럼비아주로 이민을 안 오고 싶다는 그런 문제점이 제일 크다고.
Yeah, and in the next 10 years, there's going to be a workforce shortage, so we need to address that.
그리고 앞으로 10년간 그 현재도 너무 일자리가 없지만 앞으로 10년간 그런 일자리가 더 없어진다고.
No, there's going to be more work than there is people to fill it. We don't have enough people.
그 앞으로 10년간 그 일자리가 많이 만들어져도 그 저희 브리티시 컬럼비아 주에 그런 그 일자리들을 그 할 수 있는 사람들이 그 없다고
부족하다.
말씀하셨습니다.
Yeah, 부족하다. That's why we need immigration.
And so when I think about, particularly the Korean community, I know there's many students that come over from Korea. We want to continue to support that happening. We also want to work with the educational facilities in Korea to make sure that they're meeting the standards that we're looking for the various skills when they come here, so that when they come to British Columbia, they can come directly into the workforce and they don't need retraining when they come here to British Columbia. It's going to be an important piece of how we make sure that we have immigration that makes sense and that works for British Columbia.
그리고 한국 교육청이랑 그 같이 손을 잡고 같이 일해야 된다는 필요성도 얘기했습니다. 왜냐하면 그 한국 그 교육청이랑 이렇게 같이 얘기를 먼저 안 하고 상의를 안 하면 그럼 한국에서 이민 오고 싶은 가족들이 여기 와서 일자리 같은 걸 구할 때 뭐를 그 일자리에 대한 그 필요한 실력이나 그런 게 아무래도 충실해야 될 거니까 일단 한국 교육청이랑 같이 손을 잡고 같이 일하고 그 다음에 한국에 있는 이민 올 가족들이랑 어린 친구들을 먼저 가르쳐줘야 된다고 말씀하셨습니다.
I actually am very optimistic about British Columbia's future. Despite the fact we have massive deficits, despite the fact that it is so difficult for business to be able to operate, and we have youth leaving this province, I believe strongly in what we can do as this province. I believe that if we take advantage of our natural resources, if we can see those strategic investments that are needed, if we can take control of things like immigration, we'll be able to address housing, we'll be able to address the affordability, we'll actually be able to build once again a province that people can have confidence to build a future in.
현재 브리티시 컬럼비아 주의 상태에 그렇게 만족하진 않지만 그래도 앞으로 5년간, 10년간 앞으로 브리티시 컬럼비아 주의 미래에 대한 희망이 그래도 엄청난다고 합니다. 그리고 아무래도 제일 중요한 거는 여러분의 도움이랑 같이 이렇게 앞으로 다 같이 나서야 되는 그런 일이라 아무래도 여러분이 많이 도와줘야 되는 그런 점도 있고 다 같이 해내야 되는 그런 거라고 생각한다고 합니다.
But it's only possible to achieve this, quite frankly, if we have a change in politics in BC. We have to stop with all of this ideology that's happening. We have to get focused on the basics. We have to make sure that everything that we do within government is done efficiently. We need to be able to look at savings there. And I'll give you just one example in healthcare. We have 11 times more administration in healthcare than they do in Germany, even though Germany has twice the population of Canada. We've just got so much administration and bureaucracy. We have to get big changes there. We have to get bureaucracy out of the way and unleash our potential as a province.
Wow. That's really, did you understand?
Do you want to?
No, you go ahead. That it's like Germany has doubled the population, but we have 11 times more
Administration.
people that work there. You go ahead.
그 현재 독일에서는 그 캐나다보다 그 사람 그 인구를 보면 11배
No, twice the population.
그 2배가 더 많은데 그 아무래도
Yeah, I'll try. 저보다 잘 이해하실 것 같은데 독일은 캐나다보다 2배 인구가 있는데 캐나다 그런 일하는 administration 공무원이 11 times more 더 많은 사람들이 일을 한대요. 그만큼 그 스케일이 이렇게 잘 안 됐으니까 헬스케어 늘 부족하고 큰 문제가 있다고. 그러니까 독일 보면 우리가 그만큼 더 이렇게 efficient하게 해야 된다는 것을 말씀하셨습니다.
I just want to give a couple of other examples of the overburden that we have in our bureaucracy and stuff. It can take 3 to 5 years to do housing projects here in the Lower Mainland. In Denmark, it takes 2 months. Why does it take so long here? It doesn't need to take that long. In British Columbia, it can take 15 years to get a mining permit. In Sweden, it takes 2 years. Why does it take so long in British Columbia? We need to look at these other jurisdictions in terms of how they do it, and we need to make changes in British Columbia so we can be far more efficient and unleash our economy and potential.
지금 현재 브리티시 컬럼비아 주에서 제일 큰 문제는 저희 시민들이랑 저희 정부가 브리티시 컬럼비아 주의 포텐셜을 끝까지 안 쓴다는 게 제일 큰 문제라고 말씀하셨습니다. 예를 들어서 다른 그 유럽인 나라들은 예를 들어서 2년 안에 끝낼 수 있는 일을 브리티시 컬럼비아는 그게 5년이 걸리고 다른 나라에서는 2달 안에 끝나는 일이 여기서는 3년이 걸리고 그래서 그게 제일 큰 문제라고 말씀하셨습니다.
So if we can do this, if we can get our minds open, if we can take advantage of our natural gas and trading with the Asia Pacific, if we can tie more closely into that, then we can then go to the Americans and say, you're our greatest allies, you're our greatest friends, but if you don't want our goods, that's okay, we can trade elsewhere. We need to be treated fairly by the Americans, and we are not being treated fairly today. And so, but we only can make those changes if we can come from a position of strength. And that's what we need to be able to do in British Columbia. It builds a future for our youth. It helps with affordability and addressing these issues that we have in our economy, our healthcare, whether it's drugs and addiction. But most importantly, it puts us in that position of strength to be able to fulfill what I believe people came to British Columbia for, which is to be able to build a future here.
현재 제일 큰 문제는 미국이 저희 브리티시 컬럼비아 주랑 캐나다한테 너무 불공평하다는 그 점을 강조하셨습니다. 근데 일단 그런 불공평함을 일단 넘어서려면 일단 브리티시 컬럼비아라는 주가 일단 저희가 먼저 개선할 점이 엄청 많다고 말씀하셨고 그런 점들을 특히 저희 경제적인 문제 같은 점들을 개선을 먼저 하지 않으면 그럼 미국한테 절대 그런 불공평함을 못 넘어서고 그 다음에 그렇게 계속 문제들을 겪기 때문에 일단 저희 주부터 먼저 발전해 나가고 일일이 일단 다 같이 나서가는 그렇게 말씀하셨습니다.
And under David Eby and the NDP, we have seen the opposite happening. We've seen our trade with Asian countries decline. We've seen our reliance on the Americans expand. We have not been able to get our products offshore. We become very reliant and we become very weak. And that's why we need these changes. What we're seeing has to be reversed in British Columbia. And so that'll be my last comments, and then I'll open it up for questions.
브리티시 컬럼비아 주에 지금 현재 너무 저희가 그냥 힘이 없다고 말씀하셨습니다. 그리고 그 힘이 좀 생기고 저희가 브리티시 컬럼비아 주가 일단 다른 나라들한테 존경을 받고 싶으면 일단 저희 나라가 먼저 저희 주가 고쳐야 될 점을 일단 개선해야 된다고 말씀하셨습니다.
So for that, open it up to any questions that you may have.
Okay, I have a list here, so we'll start with Juno.
For this spot.
Do you need a mic?
Yes.
So you said that there will be more work in the next 10 years, but how come there is no work for the youth currently in BC?
That's a very good question. And you think about it, we are short doctors, we are short nurses, we're short truck drivers, we are short teachers, and yet our youth can't find a job. Part of that is because the government has increased minimum wage so much, it makes it difficult for employers to hire young students and to give them training. But also, more importantly, our economy, in a lot of these jobs that youth would normally come in, people are very uncertain because of what's going on with the Americans and what's going on internally with our economy. And so it's that interesting problem where we have a lot of skilled trades, a lot of skilled positions that are needed, but we need to be able to give youth those initial jobs, and our economy at that level is weak. And so that's one of the reasons why we have such strong unemployment right now with youth.
Okay, Chosun?
조선일보.
This is kind of related to the question that he asked. But when I'm trying to find jobs and seeing my colleagues, recent graduates, there's a lot of people that are headed back to Korea or in the States as well, finding jobs. And looking at government positions and NGOs, there's been like government funding cuts. And so during this time, like, how should we as youth or recent graduates navigate through the market?
Boy, that's a tough question. And the reason why it's difficult is because the environment that's been created here by the ADP is obviously very challenging, very negative for our young people. When there's a poll from last year that showed that half of youth in British Columbia are thinking about leaving. 1 in 3, all British Columbians are thinking about leaving. It's understandable that it's difficult to find jobs. It's difficult to particularly find something that you can be able to afford to build a future, whether that's to save up for school or whether that's, to be able to just put food on the table and have a roof over your head. So this is the real challenge we have in British Columbia. We've got all these, like I say, these shortages of skills, but at the same time, we're not seeing the investment in workers at the front line because of how difficult it is to do work here in British Columbia. Our taxes are too high, and our economy just is not where it needs to be. So it's an interesting problem. So my message to the youth is, we need change. We need to be able to get this, and the only way we can do this, we're pushing where we can on the government, but I just believe the only way we can do this is to see that philosophical change at government, which is an election. And so it's going to be a tough period of time. I wish it wasn't, but it's going to be a tough period of time until we get to the next election.
There's time for 2 rounds as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Today's money에서 질문 받겠습니다.
이지은 씨.
I give others a chance.
Okay.
KTV에서 받겠습니다.
Mr. Lee, you didn't get to say hello to him.
It's okay, I'll say hello afterwards.
Hi, GI from ATV, and I have 2 questions which is related. Consulting BC used to be very small party, then now it's big party. So there must be some direction difference under your leadership, and then you are expecting leadership kind of critics. So recently, so what you have a comment on that?
Sure. So first of all, I think as a province, it's been almost 100 years since the Conservative Party in British Columbia has had a significant presence. And I think what we're seeing today with the Conservative Party is there's been this surge of people that want change, that want a different direction, and want a government that's going to make sure it's focused on the hardworking, everyday people in this province, because that seems to be lost by the governments that we've had over the last number of decades. It's been too much focus on ideology and not just on people, on getting things done in this province. So I think that's what a lot has happened in terms of the surge of popularity of the Conservative Party. And with regards to critics, we've just seen a cabinet shuffle by the NDP. So we are actually in the process of doing a review of all of our critic positions, and we're actually going to be reassigning. But one of the things that I found just very strange by this NDP government is the largest issue that we have in British Columbia right now, other than the affordability side, but as government, is our trade. We have a trade problem with the United States. We've got trade problems with China. We've got declining trade with Asian countries. We need to open up our trade across this country. And yet this government does not have a minister directly responsible for trade.
Wow.
That to me is just, it's very telling about how out of touch this government is with the real problems we're facing in British Columbia. So you will see a critic from our party that will be focused directly on trade.
YTN에서 한국어로 질문하셔도 됩니다.
I'm interested in the immigration system in Canada. I think the immigration system handled by the federal stage. So you mentioned about that BC will accept more immigration, but federal government divide the member, how many people accepted by the province stage. So how can you solve this problem?
Yeah, it's a difficult problem, but I look at what Quebec does. Quebec is in charge of its own immigration. So why can't British Columbia do the same? And so what we would be asking the federal government is for a delegated authority so that British Columbia takes control of our own immigration. We set our targets. We look at the qualifications for people coming in. We work with countries, with people that want to come into British Columbia to make sure that we're meeting those needs in British Columbia. But today, unfortunately, we've seen, particularly when it comes to students, we have seen some institutions, and I use that word loosely because they're backdoor ways for people to immigrate into Canada. And I think that's wrong. It takes away from legitimate students coming in, wanting to get educated here, wanting to train and hopefully, immigrate here and build a future here. So there's some things that we need to clean up that are going on that shouldn't be. And the only way we can address this is to be able to look after it ourselves, because Ottawa is too far away. They're too detached from what is happening in British Columbia.
I want to ask one more thing. The immigration system is now the score system. The score is very, very high. Most Korean in South Korea want to Canada to immigrate, but they can't nowadays because the score is very, very high. It's the same federal stage and this PNP also, and Saskatchewan also, something like that. So how can you solve this score system?
Yeah, so that's part of the change that we would have to be able to implement as taking control of our own immigration. We can't change that scoring system if the federal government's in control. By us taking control of it, it allows us to be able to set different targets and a different way of approaching immigration. So that's going to be our approach as the Conservative Party, working within Canada, but taking control of our own immigration.
Hana TV.
So hi, I'm Yuta, and I'm
Okay, there's a mic here, yeah. Although we can hear you, but just in case.
Just for everybody in the room to hear you.
Hi, I'm Yunha, and I'm the student reporter representative of Hana TV, and today we wanted to ask a few questions regarding the party's policies.
So we're going to do 2 rounds, so maybe you can do two right now, yeah.
As a leader of the BC Conservative Party, what do you believe is the most urgent policy issue that BC is facing right now?
The most urgent issue that we're facing, it's hard to say one thing in particular because so many things are linked. But what I would suggest the most urgent thing is to change the government. Yeah, but and from a policy perspective, getting our economy going is certainly the largest issue, because if you want to address health, if you want to address crime, if you want to address the drugs, if you want to address affordability, tax relief, you need revenue. And so you need to be able to have a strong economy. And so I think that's the biggest issue that we need to be focused on.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Hong, and I want to ask a question about the education system of BC. So the Conservative Party of BC has proposed to reintroduce letter grades for grades 4 to 9, and also standardized exams to grades 10 to 12. So how do they plan to implement these changes, and how can they ensure that these policies support both achievement and student well-being?
And which?
Student well-being.
Student well-being, yes. So I think, what is the goal of our education system? It's to make sure that our students have a future, that they can succeed in life, in the things that they want to be able to achieve. And so if without measurements, you have no way to know whether students are being successful. And so I actually think it's important that we have letter grades, that parents then understand, because if there's additional support that's needed in certain areas, parents can be able to step in. But if they don't see what's going on, then how do they know how to help? And so it's important for me, from my perspective on education, that we do tests, that we do grading, that we allow people, both students, to know how they're doing, parents to know how they're doing. So I think that's the most important thing for our education system. But also, you're right in terms of building strong students from a social perspective as well. And so part of that is we need to make sure that we have a very strong anti-bullying program in schools, as well as counselor support for students to be able to help them through any issues that they have, and extend that out also to family. Because obviously, you're in a situation where sometimes students, there's things going on at home, and they needs to be able to work as a team between what's going on at home and what's going on at school. But most importantly, we want to make sure that parents have the rights, that they know what's going on with their kids, that they have the ability to be able to influence and support their children.
Yeah. As a teacher of 21 years, where we used to have grades and things were measured, and we worked very closely with parents, I totally support these positions of the BC Conservative Party. I just wanted to add my support to that.
Thank you.
Vancouver Times, or Vancouver Times.
저는 한국어로 질문하겠습니다. 제가 준비해왔던 질문이 있었는데 많이 중복돼가지고요. 우선은 지금 저희 부동산 경제 쪽이 많이 업앤다운이 심하고 있는 가운데 이거를 계속 이민 규제 정책으로 잡아 나아갈 건지, 그리고 지금 대학교들도 많이 힘들어하고 재정적으로 많이 힘들어하고 있는 가운데 이것 또한 이민 규제 정책으로 계속 가지고 나갈 건지, 또한 앞으로의 실질적인 정책은 어떤 방향으로 나갈 건지 너무나 궁금합니다.
So she's asking currently, especially with the real estate market in British Columbia, it's very volatile, it's so up and down, and it's so unstable. And she was just asking if there's anything you as a leader have prepared for a situation like this.
And also the university, the student situation, right?
Student housing, you mean?
I think she's 두 번째 이슈가 그 대학교. Just some the challenges in the universities that are being faced, especially with international students.
Yeah. So our housing market right now is in a recession in British Columbia. And what I mean by that is many of the people that are building homes have stepped back from projects. They're not completing their projects, or they're not starting their projects, and that will create a lot of pressure in terms of British Columbia. A lot of our economy, of course, is dependent on a strong housing market. So we need to take significant steps to be able to support our housing market in British Columbia, particularly when it comes to things like rental units, both for students as well as for youth coming out and trying to get those first places that they want to live. So there's an old program called the MERV program, which is multi-unit residential buildings. Our goal is to look at bringing that back in. It allows for rapid depreciation of capital, which allows to get to profitability much faster. And most of our rental stock was built under that type of program. We want to see that returned to British Columbia. We want to be able to, like say, if we get that strong economy going, we want to see significant wage growth, which helps with affordability so that more people can afford to be able to get into the housing market. And so there's a lot that needs to go on to support housing, but those are the sort of the key pieces that need to be put in place in British Columbia. And when it comes to our, do you want to, sorry, I forgot, should we stop and translate?
Yeah.
Do you want to stop and try to translate? Or maybe I've said too much.
I think they're okay.
You're okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. When it comes to our universities as well, there are some things that are going on in our universities that I'm not happy about. When I see, for example, anti-Semitism going on in our universities, I look at our universities and I think there's too much ideology that is driving our universities. They're not focused on academics and achievement. There's too many other things that are in there, and I think they need to get refocused on academics, on making sure that they're doing what they can for students to be able to build their future. And so there's some shifts. We only have so much control as a province, but there's some shifts that we need to be putting pressure on to try to see changes to make sure that they're there for what they're supposed to be there, which is providing our youth with their future. And foreign students, of course, is part of that. Coming into our university, if you're allowing things like anti-Semitism, allowing hate to happen on campus, that can spread, and I think that's wrong. I look at British Columbia, we are a multicultural society here. We have people from every nation around the world that have come to this thing, to British Columbia, and they've built their future here, and they should be able to feel safe here. And when I see things going on in our schools, I'm worried about how that continues to expand in terms of where you get, for example, Asian hate crimes that have been happening, whether it's anti-Semitism, whether it's even, Palestinian hate. Like, there's so much going on that it's just wrong. Everybody who comes to this province needs to be able to feel safe. They need to be able to feel welcomed because it's part of who we are. It's part of the culture that we built in British Columbia.
And what about the declining international students and the impact on the universities?
Yeah, so I'd address that through immigration in terms of the decline of international students. We need to set those targets in British Columbia, and students coming in is a big part of that immigration. We need to take care of the bad actors in terms of what's been going on and as a backdoor for coming into Canada. But at the same time, our universities are great places for foreign students to be able to come in and to learn and to be able to build a future and maybe have an option to be able to stay here in Canada. And so I want to be able to see that continue. I don't want to see the failed policies that have been going on from Ottawa damage our ability to be able to build our future in British Columbia, which is why we need to take control of our own immigration and work on those targets, and which would include foreign students coming into our universities.
Next round, go back to Chosun.
No, it was Jungang it started.
Jungang, sorry. Start with Jungang again.
So you mentioned that I think the biggest problem right now is the housing crisis. I think that's why most of the youth are leaving Canada. And you mentioned that other countries can build things really fast, like in 2 months. So would we, in BC, would we also be able to do this? Like, I heard that during the wartime, after the war, they built these kind of wartime homes. They're called the Vancouver Special, was it? Or, will we still be able to do something like this, or is there any space for it?
So there is opportunities that we can look at in terms of that for housing. But I also look at it, for example, it's taken us 15 years to do an LNG plant in British Columbia. One major LNG export facility. There's been a couple of smaller ones as well. In that same time, in the United States, they've got 16 plants up and running. They had 0. They built 16, we built 1. In Germany, to build an LNG import facility, they permitted and built it and had it operating in 8 months. So what is the problem here? We are obviously way too much administration, way too many problems. And so when you go to things like professional reliance, when you have your professional engineers, you have your architects, they sign off on a project like a housing project, that should be all that's needed. They've met the guidelines, they've signed off on it. We don't need to go through this long drawn out process that we have. And so this is what needs to change in British Columbia. We need to do a reset of these things to get back to actually being able to build. And, you know, we may look at, there may be some areas where we can look at building even new communities in British Columbia and an area that, that we can expand for housing. So we're going to look at all sort of options in British Columbia. But another important piece of that is also to make sure that we've got good transit. And our TransLink in British Columbia is, you know, they're running a shortfall. We need to expand out rail networks and links so that people can move around so they aren't as reliant on vehicles. So all of this helps in terms of those pressures. But once again, it starts by making the changes that are needed to get our economy going in British Columbia.
Thank you.
Chosun.
Hi, my name is Alina from Chosun, and you mentioned that BC is overly dependent on the U.S. for the trade and lacks strong relationships with the Asian markets. As Korean Canadians, we see a lot of potential in building ties with Korea and other Asian countries. What would you and the BC Conservative Party propose to diversify BC's trade strategy in the Asia Pacific region?
So the NDP closed all of our independent trade offices. We had independent trade offices in Korea, in China, in Japan, in the Philippines, in India. All of them were closed. They're doing trade out of our consulates, and that doesn't allow us to have that sort of focus. So we want to reopen independent trade offices to be able to focus on getting those connections built and expand our economy. One thing I'm going to start doing here as the opposition leader is this fall I want to meet with the consulates of all the Asian countries, Korea, China, Japan, the Philippines. I want to meet with them all. I want to talk about what they want to see from British Columbia and how we can build those relationships, because it starts by having those conversations. But we desperately need to be able to have that. And when we talk about reliance on the Americans, here's just something to think about. Last year, it was between 10 and 20% of the electricity that we need, that we consume, we had to buy from the Americans because we aren't self-sufficient. The year before that, it was 10%. This year, in the first 4 months, it was 6%. Why would we be so dependent on the Americans? We have to import all of our jet fuel for our airports from the Americans. We don't have the ability to produce that in British Columbia. And we are completely reliant on the Americans. We only procure 1/3 of the food we consume from British Columbia. 2/3 of the food we consume comes from outside of our province, close to half of that from the Americans. We need to think about how we double food production in British Columbia. So there's a lot that we need to do to reduce our reliance on the Americans, but most importantly, we also have to take those steps on how we diversify our trade with those Asian countries. And it starts by having the conversations, building relationships, and getting our trade offices open.
Today's money.
보수당 입장에서 미국의 관세 문제를 어떻게 보고 있는지, 해야 하는지 방향에 대해서 좀 알려주세요.
The tariffs, I think, right?
So currently,
Tariff 네.
So currently, the U.S. are imposing very aggressive taxes. And,
Tariffs.
Tariffs, right? So she was just wondering how
A BC conservative government would handle
overcome
it.
that and reduce that.
When you're dealing with somebody like Trump, with the Americans, with tariffs, if you're coming at it from a position of weakness, you have no cards to play. You have no options. We're in a position of weakness. We're so dependent upon the Americans that we can't go to them and say, if you don't want our goods, that's fine. We can do other things. So in order to be able to deal with the tariff problem that we have and our trade problem with the Americans, this is why we need to strengthen our economy and our exports. And we need to treat it as a crisis. We have a fiscal crisis in this province. We need to treat it as a crisis. We need to get our economy strong and going. And then you can go to the Americans and say, we want to trade with you. It makes sense financially. You're our greatest allies. But if you don't want to treat us fairly, it's okay. We got other places we can go. But if we can't get to that place, then we have to take whatever they're giving us because we don't have any position of strength. And I'll give you an example. Our forest sector is now facing 35% duties and anti-dumping. It is very destructive for our forest sector in British Columbia. I wouldn't be surprised to see many more mill closures. And quite frankly, the coastal forest sector is in crisis right now. How do we change that to get a deal with the Americans? Well, they ship about 18 million tons of thermal coal through Vancouver. They're reliant on our Vancouver port to be able to export their coal. We can put a carbon tax on that and collect and revenue from that and hold it in a trust and say, do you want to have free trade in terms of being able to move the coal through our port? Great, we're more than ready to do that, but let's get our forest industry supported as well. And so you have to be able to come at it with a card to play. You have to come at it with strength in order to actually be able to get a deal done with the Americans. And that's what a conservative government would do.
Mr. Lee, KTV. YTN, Rebecca.
You said that you will enlarge the natural resource industry. How can you handle and survive the criticism in the environment issue?
So it's a false narrative that the environmental groups have to say that if you're going to be utilizing our resources, you're going to be hurting the environment. And that's wrong. Our forest sector, for example, is the most renewable, the most environmentally friendly products that you can ever use, that we can ever produce. And so it's a wrong narrative to say that forestry is bad, because it's not. Because these forests grew, they need to be renewed. It's part of a cycle, and we can utilize that to strengthen. But also, when you look at things like, for example, opening a mine. If we open a mine in British Columbia, it creates a hole in the ground, right? It creates a disruption in terms of that environment. But at the same time, we don't have the resources to be able to do significant investment in the environment unless we have the revenues. So we always have to have that balance. And so part of that is to make sure we got strong environmental stewardship. And so that's making sure that we deal with our biodiversity on the environment in terms of making sure that we meet and preserve those needs that are out there. It's also to make sure that we do really good investment in water and water management. Because at the end of the day, that is one of the most important things. If you're dealing with anything in the environment, if you haven't dealt with water, nothing else matters. And so we want to do significant research in investing in research in our aquifers, our relationship between our surface and subsurface water, making sure that we've got the cleanest standards anywhere in the world for our water that we have in British Columbia. So all that is part of how we address the environment while we utilize our resources to be able to strengthen our economy.
Okay, I think it's close to the end time. Do you have any closing remarks or final comments?
Well, maybe if there's any final question.
Yeah.
One more question.
Okay, one more question.
Okay,
What's
Hannah TV, last question.
We can just ask whoever has a question.
Okay, where's Bella?
하고 싶은 사람 있으시면
last one?
So my name is Yasu Yoon from Hana TV. So I recently had interviews with Korean veterans, and I noticed that there's a large group of seniors in BC who need care and support. So what specific policies or plans does BC Conservative Party has to ensure their well-being and safety regarding house stability and house care?
Nice, simple question for a last question. So something I want to just touch on is I really want to thank veterans, people who have served. I want to make sure that we support them. It's why we have a critic who is a liaison to the military and to our veterans, so that we can make sure we're meeting their needs here in British Columbia. When it comes to looking after seniors, we need some significant investment in that. And so a little bit of complexity here. There's a report that just came out yesterday, showed that 12.5% of the seniors who could be living at home having to go into facilities and on waiting lists because they're not getting support for home. In my own riding, I was talking with one nurse who her job is to try to provide home support for seniors and to be able to stay in their homes. And she regularly comes home in tears because she always has to say to people, I'm sorry, we don't have any support to provide you. That's wrong. Our seniors, help to build our province. Our seniors, you need to be honored and supported. And so as a government, we need to do significant investment in supporting seniors to be able to stay in their homes with their families, because that is the best outcome for a senior, to be able to do that. And where they can't do that, or where they're isolated, because we want to make sure you don't isolate seniors, because that's not right for them. Then we need to be looking at expanding our facilities and making sure that we've got that support for seniors as well. And so part of that, of course, is making sure that you've got the healthcare investments, but we need significant investment, in particular in that home support, to be able to support families and seniors as they age in their own homes. And I'm talking from a little bit of experience, because both my parents, we were able to keep in their own home. They passed away in 2022. They lived good, long lives. But we were able to keep them in their home, and I could see the difference it made. My mom had dementia, but the difference it made being in a home environment, a familiar environment, was huge in terms of quality of life. And so we want to be able to support that, so we're supporting the right outcomes to be able to help with seniors, particularly in their later years.
Okay.
So with that, first of all, thank you very much for everybody coming out. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do this on a much more regular basis. There's so many issues that are happening in British Columbia, and my apologies once again for having taken so long to be able to do this. But we will make sure that we try to do this, 2 or 3, maybe even 4 times a year, to give an opportunity to be able to catch up in terms of the things that are happening across this province.
Wonderful.
So thank you once again for everyone.
아까 말씀하신 대로 더 자주 이렇게 기자회견을 하고 싶어 하시고 너무 늦어서 죄송하다고 말씀하셨습니다. 오늘 시간 내주셔서 너무나 감사하고 미래가 밝게 보신다고 말씀하셨을 때 저도 우리 주정부 보수당 정부와 우리 연방 정부 보수당 정부가 있으면 무슨 체인지가 우리가 할 수 있는지 그거에 대해서 저도 잘 생각해 보겠습니다. So you said there's a bright future. You envisioned that, and I was imagining a BC conservative government with the federal conservative government and what we could do together. So that will be a bright future ahead. Thank you so much. He's available to do some scrums, apparently. So I don't know what the availability of the room is. I'll ask Angelina Park. Until 10:30. Okay. 개인 그 인터뷰 하실 수 있다고 말씀하셨네요. So thank you very much, everyone. Good questions, and thank you, John, for taking the time to get to really know the community.
Thank you.